One weekend of pampering later.
Until then, I can only imagine the Star Fox team is out flying across the galaxy, waiting to be called back into action.
Meanwhile,
You boys seen this?
Yeah, but it's not Wolf, so who cares?
It looks like they're outnumbered.
You know what I'm thinking.
Absolutely, positively not! We came here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to take down... I knew I should have retired back on Corneria.
I was right! It was only a matter of time until we talked about this one. Starlink Battle for Atlas. Man, what a trip. While the game originally released in 2018, it wasn't until 2019 when this game finally hit my radar. That, of course, being due to the surprise Star Fox DLC that would drop roughly a year after the game came out. I picked it up in 2019, played it for, I don't know, 7 minutes, got completely lost, and decided that that was quite enough. It never really bothered me until I started making content, that is. Specifically Star Fox content. Y'all know that I'm a huge Star Fox guy. Top 3 franchise for me, no doubt. So I'll take any chance I can to talk about it. The problem is there's nothing really concrete for me to talk about, at least with regard to the source material. And here's Starlink, a game that clearly fills that need for me. But like I said, I really didn't like this game the last time I played it. If I'm being honest, I was originally never planning to play this game. But then I got a comment that asked me to look at the Star Fox DLC in Starlink, and it got me thinking, maybe, just maybe, I should give this another shot. Then I had a nice chat with my buddy That Nintendo Quality, who also just recently talked about Starlink in one of his videos, which you should totally check out by the way, and that pretty much locked it in. So I bought the Star Fox bundle, and as soon as it came in, I dove right in, and oh man, this time things were completely different. Starlink is an action-adventure third-person shooter where you pilot a spacecraft across the galaxy of Atlas. Nothing is on rails. Let me repeat, nothing is on rails. Everything is all range. I guess that doesn't make any sense if you're not familiar with Star Fox. Let me not talk like the aliens from Atlas for a sec. Basically what I mean to say is you have full 360-degree control over every speck of land and space in Atlas. You can literally go anywhere across the 8 worlds in Atlas, as well as anywhere in the galaxy in between. The way you get around is achieved in 2 major ways. First, while on the planet, you'll hover near the surface and explore, I guess, what is equivalent to on-foot exploration? That's the best I got. Normally, I'd explain how everything feels with the movement, but for that, I need to take a tangent into one of the more unique aspects of this franchise. The toys. That's right. Starlink is one of those infamous toys-to-life franchises. For those unfamiliar, allow me to explain. So you have these toys, and you need to put them on some special portal, or in this case controller, to have them feature in the game. For Starlink, we have 5 moving parts. The little dock thingy to hold your Joy-Con, your pilot, so for me, Fox McCloud, the ship itself, and 2 weapons that attach to each slot on the wings. Laid out like this, it doesn't really look like much, but combine it together and boom, you got yourself a fully functioning, slightly uncomfortable controller to fully immerse yourself into the world of Atlas. Or I guess that was the intent. So going back to what I was saying earlier, it's kind of impossible to talk about this game in a general sense. During my playthrough, I had access to 2 ships. The standard ship everyone gets, and of course the R-Wing. Obviously, since Star Fox is goated, I chose to mainly use the R-Wing. Classified as a light ship, the R-Wing out of the aircraft I had was easily the best. It's the fastest, the most agile, and it packs quite the punch. Again, I have to stress, your speed, weight, and shields of your ship will entirely depend on exactly which content you unlocked either via the digital downloads or the toys themselves. Now, exploring the planet is all well and good. I had a pretty decent handle on the controls, but like I mentioned earlier, there's more than just the ground traversal. You'll be zooming around at near breakneck speeds, sure, but you'll see pretty much all of the planet pretty quickly with how fast you move. I did mention that there's 8 planets to explore, right? How do I get to each of them? Well, as you're flying across the planet with the click of a button, you'll rise to the sky, and then the galaxy is truly your oyster. And as you get closer to the planet's atmosphere, that's when Starlink all comes together. While moving around on the ground is fine and all, it's when you get into space where Starlink truly shines. It's worth noting that I'm playing the Nintendo Switch version of Starlink. Obviously, that's because the Star Fox content is exclusive to the Switch. And, the game looks alright? Ugh, I'm sorry. It's just, this game is available across all major platforms, including PC. It just sucks that the stuff I actually want to play is locked behind the weakest hardware. Being less cynical, I have to admit, with what they were given, Ubisoft Toronto was actually able to make a pretty decent port for the Switch. It runs at 30 FPS, but it rarely, if ever, drops lower than that. It really only happens when there's too much on screen and on the title screen when you load in for the first time. Other than that, it was pretty smooth, not gonna lie. Starlink probably looks at its worst when you're traversing the 8 planets. The detail just isn't there. The constant pop-in takes you right out of the cockpit. And for the most part, all the planets look the same. And if they don't, they're made up of the most generic planet themes I've ever seen. That's a little harsh, I know, but I mean grass planet, ice planet, volcano planet, grass planet again? It just gets boring. I lost count how many times I had to check the map just to remember what planet I was on. They're all just pretty bland. The execution of the planets isn't necessarily the worst I've ever seen, but it's safe to say no matter which platform you play this game on, you're not going to have your mind blown or anything. When it comes to space though, the same problems occur, sure. Constant pop-in, things look samey, but here's the thing. I actually love how Starlink looks as you traverse through Atlas itself. It's not just Star Fox I'm obsessed with. I think I just have a genuine appreciation for astrology and space in general. Hasn't it ever crossed your mind how small we are compared to how big just the known universe is? The vast emptiness of space, the beauty of the stars, and the stories told across the cosmos. It's all just fascinating to me. Having the opportunity to explore this vast galaxy was always the part I looked forward to the most while playing. Even on Switch, not running at its max potential. When you're exploring the cosmos, with this soft ambient noise lingering as you travel at the speed of light, it just feels right. It just dawned on me that I've really just been harping on the game's aesthetic and the overall feel. I should probably start talking about the actual game, huh? We've established that the movement, all things considered, is pretty solid with some slight differences depending on which ship you use. We've talked about how the game looks pretty decent. So what exactly is it you do in Starlink? With the game being spread across 8 different planets, there's no shortage of content on offer. One of the planets is actually tied to the DLC, so we'll get to that one later. So across the main 7 planets across Atlas, you have a few different objectives, all of which lead to the same goal: save Atlas from Grax, a merciless cult leader chosen by the mysterious wardens to conquer Atlas with the power of Nova. When you land on a planet for the first time, you'll notice besides Grax's forces, the planets for the most part are pretty barren. You have a few scientists doing some research around, sure, but for the most part it's just you, the fauna native to the planet, and the enemies spread across the system. With those in mind, what you actually do should be pretty straightforward from this point. Research the planet to learn about its creatures and landscape, and save the planet from Grax's forces. Very simple on its surface. The act of accomplishing these goals, however, is a bit more complicated. Since I find combat more interesting, let's start there. Now, if you're familiar with Star Fox combat, things in concept will translate over pretty well. In practice? Yeah, you gotta make a few adjustments. In Star Fox, since things are on rails, the controls are nuanced enough for you to accurately aim precisely at anything you want. Even in games like Star Fox Zero, which has some of the worst motion controls in video games, you still have enough control to aim at whatever you want. Even the all-range sections. Since the area is so limited, you can get around and aim super well in combat. Starlink? Oof. It can get rough at points. To be positive for a second, I gotta say, when things get frantic, the high-octane action of Starlink rivals even some of the greats like Star Fox Assault in terms of visual aesthetic while in combat. I mean, do you see how much shit's going on? Sometimes I can't even keep up, and I just spray and pray. It keeps you on the edge of your seat every time you encounter any adversary in Atlas. One of the most thrilling feelings is traveling across the galaxy in hyperspace and approaching a giant battleship just waiting to hurl everything it has at you, leaving you with only your combats as a pilot and sheer dumb luck to overcome the enemy. Combined together, this all makes for quite a fun combat system, which again you'll be using to save Atlas from Grax and his legions. Man, why does every game have fucking legions in them? On the planet's surface, you'll be tasked with destroying Grax's presence, which is divided into a few major sections. First, you'll want to destroy these towers that spread the legion's presence on each given planet. The process is simple enough. Survive whatever obstacle the tower has until it opens up its hatch, where you'll attack the core until it's destroyed. These are whatever, I guess. I mean, the spectacle is definitely up there, but these didn't leave any sort of impression on me. You're mainly going to do these to get some resources and to weaken the enemy of the second major aspect of on-planet combat. These are Legion Primes, and these are the main source of presence that Grax will have at his disposal. What I mean is that the Legion Primes are no doubt Grax's strongest weapons. At least on the surface of the planets, that is. What's cool about the Legion Primes is their power level is determined by how many towers you've destroyed. So the more towers you've annihilated, the weaker the Legion Prime will be. I never saw more than 3 phases myself, and at least on the surface, this is where the combat truly thrives. The Legion Prime is easily one of the most unique enemies I've ever faced in a game like this. You have to employ so many different strategies on the fly. You have to use everything you've learned up to that point to tackle each of these Legion Primes. I failed to mention that you can change your setup on the fly, and it was with the battles against the Legion Primes where I took advantage of this loophole the most. For the first phase, I'd use my homing missiles, one dealing frost damage, the other dealing gravity damage. The second phase, he'd grow these weird sparks on his legs, so I'd switch to my flamethrower and shredder to quickly delete his knee pads. And if there was a final phase, I'd switch back to my homing missile since he electrifies all the ground that surrounds him, making it impossible to reach him on the surface. I mean, just look at how sick the transition is when he goes into his final phase, prompting you to take to the skies for the final stretch of the battle. Similar to the towers, you'll get a decent amount of resources for defeating a Legion Prime, as well as reducing the Legion's presence to 0. So the tower fights are kinda whatever, and the Legion Primes are hype as shit. So I guess overall I'd say the combat on the surface is pretty decent. You definitely have way more control than you would in space, which I'll get to in a second, but the enemy variety is lacking. Like each planet has a specific type of enemy element, right? So fire, ice, gravity, stuff like that. They're just broken down into very simple categories. Oh look, it's a regular grunt that happens to have an affinity for fire. Oh look, that gravity giant has a cannon. Get it? No way. Is that a shield? See what I mean? There's just not much going on, and defeating them is as simple as applying the correct element and firing away. With the Legion Prime, there's no one element that's better over another. You want to customize your ship and weapons with the best mods possible, which should be self-explanatory, to bring the Legion Prime down. There's more thinking involved. Specific weapons work in specific ways against the Legion Prime, so you need to be conscious of the weapons in your arsenal when you come toe-to-toe with one. Whereas with the regular enemies, if I'm on the ice planet, I just know to use my flamethrower as my primary weapon. Haha, melt you helpless bastards! Basically what I'm trying to say is the on-surface combat can reach the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Yeah, that sounds about right. When you're in space though, nah, everything goes off the rails. Since the combat goes from just weaving up and down to 360 degrees, you have to be extra accurate with your shots. Oh, did I also mention that the ships you face in the dogfighting combat are unbelievably small, making each shot you take that much harder? It doesn't matter what you have equipped, even with the homing missiles, at least with that first shot, you need to be ridiculously accurate. And, the controls here are so finicky. Like I said earlier, you'll just lose all control in these dogfights because the control is just not there. I've neglected to mention up till now that Starlink is a twin-stick shooter, meaning you move around with the left stick and aim with the right stick. Now think about that when you have roughly 15 ships beaming shots at you all at once and the cracks begin to show. I played this game on normal, but damn, in these sections it certainly doesn't feel normal. Hey yo, what's up with the massive difficulty spike? I just want to aim at this one guy. Come on. Come on. Like, do you see how much I'm struggling here? This sucks. But you know, looking back on it, as much as it sucks to control, these battles are sick as hell. I haven't even mentioned what your main objective in these dogfights are. And look, I get that I just dumped on the controls in these battles, but I mean, just look at it. It truly feels like a dogfight in the middle of space. You know how people say, back then this is what we imagined when talking about retro games? That's pretty much what I mean. Star Fox Zero took a pretty nice step with its all-range sections in terms of production value, but that game controls like ass in all regards. Sure, the space battles in Starlink don't control the best, but it compensates by upping the production value to max. It's gorgeous. Your goal in these space battles is to take down these dreadnought ships, which are the primary source of the Legion's presence on the planets. The dreadnoughts, if left unchecked, will send Legion Primes across all of Atlas, so your goal is to bring them down before they can cause too much damage. The dogfights and dreadnought battles are intertwined, so most of them happen simultaneously. For the most part, you'll destroy destroy a dreadnought while trying to hold off enemies from all over. So I guess all I can really say is that it controls like butt, but it looks hype as hell. And finally, we have the other way we'll be saving Atlas, by researching and developing the planets across the galaxy in service of the greater good. The way you'll do this varies in many ways. Honestly, I didn't go for 100%. I have a life I want to get back to after this video, thank you very much. So for consistency, I'll just tell you what I did. Mainly what I did on top of clearing out towers and Legion Primes is take out these imp hives to build bases. There are 5 different bases you can build. A research station that sends researchers to search the planet and its fauna, a refinery that will gather electrum, the main currency of Atlas, a workshop that will create mods for your ships, again, pretty self-explanatory, and an armory that defends the planet from the Legion while you're away. The last building you can build is the Starlink Tower, which basically just stakes your claim on the planet. There's no function to them besides raising your presence on each planet. In my head, I imagine they're like the main government building of the planet, where all the bigwigs come together to plan the development of each planet, kinda similar to the Citadel in Mass Effect, you know what I mean? The research part of the game is where you're going to be doing most of your exploration of Atlas, and it's fine I guess. It's not really anything special. Going back to what I said earlier, this version of the game kinda runs like cheeks, so I unfortunately didn't have the best visual experience. I fucking hate popping, alright? It's like my biggest pet peeve in a video game. I'm sorry, I'm being a jerk, I know, but I just hate it, alright? God, just leave me alone. Flying in space is pretty cool and looks pretty good, especially when you're flying in hyperspace. I took quite a few clean screenshots, and when you capture that perfect angle, man does it look good. But on the planets, the cracks begin to widen, and the exploration itself isn't all that exciting. I mainly went for refinery stations because I like me that sweet, sweet dollar bill, boy. And that wraps up the core gameplay of Starlink. Oh, I'm being a bit vague, you say? That's no mistake, chum. Wondering where the story content is? Well, don't worry. I promise we're going to get into it very soon. Here's the thing though, there's 3 major storylines in Starlink. We of course have the main story content where we focus on saving Atlas from Grax. Then we have 2 free DLC stories. The Crimson Moon DLC, which adds the 8th and final planet to Atlas. And of course, the Star Fox DLC, which sees the rivalry between Star Fox and Star Wolf reach a whole new level. Now of course, I'm going to be talking about all of them, but I realize that not everyone will want to watch every part of the story. Maybe for spoiler reasons, but most likely because, and let's just be honest here, you probably don't care. I know a lot of you are here just for Star Fox, so I came up with a plan to make things easier for everyone. I've decided to timestamp each story out using the YouTube chapters feature so you can decide which story you want to see. There's 3 stories here. As you can imagine, the quality of each fluctuates, so I figured this would give everyone the chance to watch what they actually want to see. So, before we get started, I'll give you about 15 seconds to decide which story you want to experience. Choose carefully, and I hope you enjoy. So I mentioned the premise of the story earlier, but let me get into full detail of the story of Starlink Battle for Atlas. Our setting is Atlas, a galaxy in the Taurus constellation. The Starlink team is a collection of pilots from Earth who have recently discovered the ability to achieve interstellar travel. Their purpose is to discover more of the universe now that they have the capability to do so. It doesn't take long for them to get attacked by Grax, whose goal is to abduct Vincent St. Grand, the original developer of Nova, the energy Starlink uses to travel in space. Nova apparently can be used in a variety of ways, as a fuel source, as a currency, and much more. So the value of Nova is made no secret. Grax is successful with his abduction, and our goal initially is to figure out what happened to St. Grand. Now in terms of gameplay, you'll be doing pretty much what I said earlier. Save the planet, and as you do this in the correct order, you'll see some cutscenes of St. Grand, quite simply getting tortured as Grax forces him to create more Nova. Jesus Christ, I was not expecting alien level horror in a game featuring the Star Fox cast.
You will show me how to make Nova, and you will kneel before your warden.
Now here's where things get iffy. Technically the Star Fox team show up in the intro of the game, but I mean they're not really active participants in the main plot. They're here for reasons I'm going to get to later, but yeah, they just kind of show up and offer their services to Starlink. Free of charge too. These guys are like the worst mercenaries ever. How this business is still running is beyond me. Besides the fact that Fox got scammed again, there's not much for them to do, which helps because nothing really happens in the story. This game has quite a big cast of characters, most of them tied to the toys obviously, and I didn't play as any of them. I had Fox McCloud already since I had the figure, and I bought the other Star Fox pilots for the Star Fox DLC, so I just played with the characters I already knew. I mainly used Fox and Falco, this being tied to their pilot abilities. Real quick, pilot abilities are special moves tied to each character. So for example, Fox can call in a member of Star Fox to assist him, and the classic Star Fox music we all know and love kicks in.
It's go time, boys. Falco here. I got you covered.
Falco can shoot the Smart Bomb, which is a godsend to clear out enemies. Peppy has this weird shield, and I honestly couldn't even tell you what Slippy's ability is. I wanted to evenly spread out the main campaign across all the pilots, but that pipe dream instantly vanished when I learned how much grinding I need to do to keep everyone on the same level. So with that in mind, I decided to just focus on Fox and Falco. They're my two favorite characters in Star Fox. I've mained both of them in Melee, so it just made the most sense. And I gotta say, the animation that plays when you pick each of the characters is just perfect. Other than that, nothing really happens. Mason, the main character of the game, wants to focus on finding St. Grand, while the rest of the team wants to focus on killing Grax. Eventually, they find out that St. Grand died while trying to transmit one final message containing the information on how to defeat Grax's mothership. After clearing all the planets of the Legion, we go ahead and charge forward with the final assault on Grax. And this boss fight is actually super cool. Not really a challenge in any way, but the arena is pretty sick, the music isn't half bad, and hearing Falco talk smack in the end was just the perfect way to end this otherwise nothing story.
All right, you feathered wannabe. Where are you?
I am in the stars. I am on every planet in Atlas. I surround you. So come bear witness as I claim every world in this galaxy.
You'll have to get through me first.
And that wraps up the main story content. I'm not trying to make this shorter on purpose, I swear. There's just nothing here. I mean, sure, I can talk about some of the characters, but be honest, do you really care about Carl Zeon, Hunter Haka, Gala Joust, Shade?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
I'm not the only one. This game sold 80% of its less than 1 million copies sold on Nintendo Switch. The reason is obvious. Rumors swirled that Nintendo actually got a behind-the-scenes look at Starlink at E3 2016 and were very pleased with what they saw. So much so that they inquired as to how they could get involved. Lead creative director Lauren Malville confirmed that they showed Starlink to then Nintendo president Reggie Fils-Aimé, Shigeru Miyamoto, and the original Star Fox team, and he pitched how they could integrate Star Fox from both a gameplay and lore perspective. It was when Miyamoto saw the R-Wing toy in person where he became convinced, and the rest, as they say, is history. Shit, this game is so tied to Star Fox, people just accept this as a weird niche Star Fox game made by another company. We all know the real reason we're here, but before we get into that, there is one more story we need to talk about first. On April 24th, 2019, Ubisoft tried one last time to will any life back into Starlink after initially flopping out of the gate. They announced that an all-new DLC titled The Crimson Moon would be coming for all players at no cost. It would add an 8th planet to Atlas, and this planet is easily the best in the entire game. When you land on the Crimson Moon for the first time, you are greeted by a projection of the person in charge, Fortune. Kinda on the nose, I like it. He's probably the first character in the game besides the Star Fox team that showed any genuine personality and, you know, basic character traits. So the quote-unquote story in this DLC is already much better. Fortune is not only the ruler of the Crimson Moon, he's also organized it in a way where he can make the most profit possible. You know that planet in Guardians of the Galaxy 1 called Nowhere? Yeah, the Crimson Moon is like that. It's where the lowest of the low gather to gamble, drink, and hide from the authorities after committing a crime. As long as they don't betray the Crimson Moon code or try and outwit fortune, they'll always have a home. In terms of gameplay, we have 4 major things to do. Technically in the menu there's 5, but that's tied to the Star Fox DLC. We're gonna talk about it later. So for the story here, essentially what we're after is taking down a few pilots who've gone rogue under Fortune's nose. Fortune has an agreement with the authorities, you see. He'll hand over criminals that step out of line if they leave him alone. So to counteract the pilots who betrayed him, he enlists the help of Starlink in return for safe passage across Crimson Moon space. This also happens to have quite a bit of character development for 2 non-Star Fox characters in particular. But first, let me talk to you about the unique gameplay added in the Crimson Moon update. First, we have the Coliseum challenges, where we have waves of enemies that Fortune curated to test our abilities to their max. This culminates in a one-on-one battle with a mech. These mechs are spread across the planet, but they're like very rare to run into, so I'm glad I at least have this so I can showcase it. Nothing to really say, it's just more ground combat at the end of the day. The mech is actually quite the challenge, but it doesn't do enough to reach the peak of the battles with the Legion Prime, and it doesn't match the spectacle of the dogfights either, so these are kind of whack. The other gameplay aspect is where the Crimson Moon DLC really shines. Races. Oh hell yeah. Alright, I'll calm down. The races are pretty fucking sick. Your goal with this mission is to gain enough street rep to capture a specific criminal Fortune has a bounty on. There's 4 mandatory races you need to do. In terms of difficulty, these are like no challenge. I had a few close calls, but nothing that really worried me. But man, I gotta say, the speed was already one of the better aspects of the movement, but the races dial it up to infinity. Your goal, obviously to win, duh, but the best manner of achieving victory isn't so simple. The controls are altered slightly. To turn on the tight corners, you're going to want to hit one of the bumpers and move the control stick in the direction you want to drift. Man, you know, the racing in concept alone was already pretty cool, but in execution, to be able to move like you're in Tokyo Drift is pretty wild. But goddamn, it just feels so right. One of the aspects in the racing that I think makes it so much fun is how it incorporates the boost. Normally when you're flying around and boosting, once it runs out, you need to wait for it to recharge. In the racing, you have these little blue balls of energy that when collected, add more to your boost. Essentially, every race is one giant combo. As soon as you start boosting, you won't want to stop, which is good because you'll need to be boosting the entire time to come out on top. It's sick, and a nice refreshing change from the core gameplay, which can definitely get taxing at times. It sucks that the racing doesn't last longer than it does, because I think pound for pound, this is the best part of the entire game. Lastly, we have 2 fetch quests. The Crimson Moon DLC has mainly revolved around 2 members of Starlink, Gala Joust, who I memed on earlier, and Eli Arborwood. Both of these characters are tied to the research stations. Eli is your ambassador for the refinery, and Gala is your ambassador for the armory. Both of them have a genuine desire to keep Atlas safe, but they have different methods of achieving this. Gala believes they can reason with the culprits and live in harmony in Atlas. Eli, letting on that he knows a bit more about these criminals, has another method of keeping Atlas safe. doing whatever's necessary if you know what I mean. While the two bicker with each other on occasion, they know that since their goals are the same, they have no choice but to work with each other. This leads to a mutual respect between the two, and some closure for Eli as it's his brother Reed Arborwood who's in charge of the commotion on the Crimson Moon. All in all, besides the racing, this DLC was pretty mid. I like that the story actually attempted to have genuine character development, but by this point, after doing the entire main story, it's too little too late. I don't care about any of the non-Star Fox characters. And with that in mind, we got one more DLC to talk about before we wrap things up. Bear with me just a bit longer. Believe me, it's going to be worth it. Ah man, it took us quite a while to get here, didn't it? Finally, we're at the best part of the entire game. Of course, it just had to be. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the announcement that Star Fox was coming to Starlink, I was really upset. At first I thought, is this what Star Fox is reduced to? An IP that gets loaned out to other publishers? Is this how bad things have gotten? Considering this was released in 2019, that would put it around 3 years after the release of Star Fox Zero in 2016. And we all remember how that went. So there was a lot riding on this DLC. And to be fair, while this isn't coming from the same team, this is coming from the same publisher as Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, a game people really seem to like. Alright, enough build up. I have to admit, this is probably the best Star Fox content we've gotten since Star Fox Assault. Star Fox 64 pretty much had no story, I don't care what you say, but starting with adventures, we started to get more personal writing for the characters. The cast started to evolve past the surface level tropes they initially showed us, and in Assault I would say it reaches its peak. So believe my surprise when I finished the Star Fox DLC in Starlink, because damn, this is quite the wild story. So I mentioned in the main story section that Star Fox actually shows up in the introduction of the game, but they didn't really play an active part in the story other than the mandatory stuff they said after finishing a mission. But the DLC explains how they showed up in Atlas in the first place. As you could expect, it isn't anything particularly groundbreaking on the surface, but buried a little deeper there's some good fan service and natural expansion of the lore. So of course, Star Fox is here for one reason, because Star Wolf is once again causing trouble. This time though, Wolf is after a bigger prize. If you know anything about Wolf, you'll know he's always been about being the best outlaw in the galaxy. He takes pride in being a gangster. However, he's never been able to get the best of Star Fox, not that we know of in the games at least. Wolf's grown tired of Star Fox's constant interruptions, so this time he decides to go full mustache twirling villain and outright tries taking over the entire Atlas galaxy. That's quite the jump there, buddy. Pigma, Leon, and Andrew accompany Wolf on his conquest, which leads me to believe that this takes place after Star Fox 64. There's probably nothing official to cite that, just my 2 cents. The majority of the story has you scouring Atlas searching for what exactly it is Wolf is planning, which turns out to be a pretty insane plan once you put together all the pieces. The other members of Star Wolf were sent across the galaxy to find unique tech inaccessible in the Lilat system. Wolf's goal is to gather all the tech he can find and combine it to make a super weapon to use both in Atlas and in the Lilat system. So the goal is simple. Find out where Wolf's super weapon is and bring it down before he can cause any major damage. If I had to make any sort of comparison, I'd have to say that the writing is most similar to Star Fox Assault. What I really liked about the dialogue in that game is that the characters were very clear on how they felt about the current situation. I know I always reference the same stuff, but this time it's really important. Star Fox Assault is all about finality, the conclusion of a trilogy, and the dialogue reflects that. Listen to General Pepper struggle as you gun him down, realizing that he has no control over his body and is attacking not just his allies, but his friends.
I'm sorry. I'm powerless. Shoot me!
The writing in the Star Fox DLC in Starlink feels kinda like that. We get a lot more explanation as to why the rivalry between these two merc groups is so intense. For example, we know that each of the members of Star Wolf was made to be a parallel of the members of Star Fox, not just in terms of design and animal choice, but also in terms of their personalities. Falco and Leon, for example, both have an insatiable need to be the best pilot in the galaxy, and that rivalry sees them at each other's throats. Leon thinks so little of Falco's flying skills, which is an easy way to tick him off. Basically, these two, while trying to achieve the same goal, have completely different methods and ideals on how to achieve that. Falco has the tendency to fly off the wagon and go off on his own, while Leon is willing to lie and cheat to achieve his goal. Pigma and Peppy, the former partners, finally get to settle their beef against each other. Remember, Pigma was the one who sold Fox's father, James, out to Andros, which got James killed. Peppy has always felt guilty about how he escaped when James needed him, and he's been carrying this burden since the ordeal happened. And Pigma constantly reminding him with each encounter certainly doesn't help. In Atlas, Peppy finally gets a chance to come to terms with his feelings. By this point, Peppy's pretty old, so to have what could be his final hurrah be the closure to the worst trauma he's experienced is pretty rad. Slippy and Andrew don't necessarily have any sort of history or something that ties them together like a similar goal, but that doesn't mean they don't get any sort of development. Slippy is just fascinated with the entire Atlas galaxy. As the tech expert and an overall geek, seeing how diverse the technology is on both sides is something that Slippy finds genuinely exciting. In the main story, no Star Fox character chips in quite as much as Slippy. I think it's fair to say his main objective is to protect the purity of Atlas as best he can. Andrew, on the other hand, well, he's up to his usual shenanigans. He still can't get over the fact that the Star Fox team killed his Uncle Andrew. But we learn more about why he's so obsessed with his uncle, beyond the fact that they're just related. Andrew genuinely believes in his uncle's cause. He thought by joining Starwolf, he'd be doing the best he could to help his uncle from the underground, and he feels like he let him down. This feeling of guilt and loss has driven Andrew to the point of madness, and if we consider this canon, we see how he ended up the way he did in Assault, and it's just so good. Finally, we have the head honchos themselves, Fox McCloud and Wolf O'Donnell. If I'm being honest, Fox doesn't get really anything in terms of character development. He just wants to help Starlink and stop Wolf. And yeah, it's pretty whack, not gonna lie. I'm sorry. He does have one interesting character trait I want to talk about. In the main Star Fox games, it's implied that Fox is a great leader, but we never really see that in action. He's usually too focused on the conflict that's right in front of him. Here though, when there's a chance for things to slow down, Fox gets to show off his best quality. You see Fox react to requests from his teammates, like Slippy asking if they can stay in Atlas for just a bit longer, or Falco asking Fox if he can take the lead on the assault against Starwolf. We get to see Fox manage his teammates' emotions, which is something a leader has to constantly be aware of. He comes off pretty stoic in his actual dialogue, but Fox always keeps his friends' feelings in mind before making a decision. Even when the story starts, he's showing this off. While Peppy is hesitant, both Slippy and Falco want to jump into the fray. And majority rules, so you know what that means. In the end, I think the most interesting character has to be Wolf, which is funny because he's barely in the game. What I find so interesting, however, are his general motives and what this could signal for his character going forward. As I mentioned earlier, Wolf has always been content playing second fiddle to a main baddie, so much so that he'll even help Star Fox if it's in his best interests. But here, Wolf has greater ambitions. He's tired of playing second fiddle to everyone. Now, it's his turn to take over the galaxy. Wolf O'Donnell has patiently been waiting for his opportunity to strike, and after mysteriously being given the opportunity with a new land to conquer, now is the time to strike. I think this is a great shift for his character. Think about it. Besides Fox, Falco, and probably Crystal, I'd say Wolf is one of the most popular characters in the entire franchise. He's like the Shadow the Hedgehog of the Star Fox series, yet he's never been given the chance as a proper villain, which has always confused me, because none of the actual final bosses in Star Fox are nearly as interesting as Wolf, and his entire team for that matter. Now, that's not to say Wolf is the most imposing bad guy of all time. I don't know if the series will ever reach the horrors of the Aperoid Queen.
I am hideous?
You are horrifying to look at.
I think Wolf would offer a unique dynamic, and this DLC taps into that just a bit. Think about it. Each member has their own rival they can focus on, and it culminates in a final one-on-one with Fox and Wolf. God damn, that would be hype as shit. One thing you'll hear often amongst fans of Star Fox is how the franchise could have been Nintendo's answer for Sonic the Hedgehog. For the most part, this isn't really a sentiment I agree with for a lot of reasons, but let's just entertain it for a second. They had the gameplay, what they always lacked was the personality. I'm definitely aging myself here a bit, but imagine Fox and Wolf going at each other like Sonic and Shadow do in SA2. A man can dream, right? What I'm getting at is that with Wolf's intentions here in Starlink, it opens the door for someone, hopefully Nintendo, to take the reins and follow up this story. Seeing Wolf act like this is so refreshing. It's so good. Yeah. More of that, please. For the most part, the story itself is pretty mid. It's another Save the Universe adventure. Sure, the way things play out are quite a bit different from what we expect, but nothing really groundbreaking happens. Just another opportunity to come up with some fan theories and a bit more to add to the lore section on the Star Fox wiki. I've always been one to give credit where it's due, and I have to credit everyone over at Ubisoft Toronto. It's clear that when Nintendo approached them with the idea of putting Star Fox in Starlink, they took the opportunity seriously, studied the source material, and put as much love and care as possible to create a Star Fox adventure that's true to the source material. As of late, Nintendo has been very generous in regards to how they loan out their IP, and you can argue their relationship with Ubisoft is where it all really started. Starlink clearly didn't turn out the way Ubisoft wanted it to, but they still went this hard for their post-launch DLC. That alone needs to be commended. Is it perfect? God no, but the heart was clearly there, and in the end that's all that really matters. Lauren Malville is clearly a huge fan of Miyamoto's work, and it shows. Just look at how good the R-Wing looks! It's so pretty, both the toy and in game! They care, bro. They really care. As much fun as I had with the Star Fox DLC, you'll notice the word bittersweet in this chapter, and unfortunately not everything here leaves me with optimism. Ubisoft did a great job adapting Star Fox in this weird space adventure game they made. I mean shit, these humans are from Earth, which means if this is canon to the Star Fox timeline, that means Earth and the Lilat system are within the same reality. Pretty nuts when you think about it, huh? But it's been 4 years since this has come out, and if you've seen my videos on Star Fox in the past, this won't be news to you. We've got nothing to latch onto in terms of upcoming Star Fox content. Nintendo doesn't really seem to care, and when you look at the history of Star Fox for a second, it makes a lot of sense. Star Fox was always created with the hardware in mind. It was always made to show off the newest console Nintendo had to offer. It just so happens they created arguably the most interesting world and some of the most interesting characters amongst all of their IP. A happy accident, I guess. I've given Miyamoto shit in the past, but after looking into this game, it genuinely seems like he has love for Star Fox even till this day. Maybe he's just waiting for the right moment, or the right collaboration opportunity to arise before crafting his latest and greatest. But come on, let's be real. It would have to have some sort of gimmick that Nintendo fanboys would argue is innovative, and it would probably just retell the original Star Fox story once again. In the off chance that Miyamoto sees this, I hope he realizes what it is fans really care about. But honestly, I'm not too optimistic. It's just been so long. I'm starting to lose all hope. In the end, the Star Fox DLC is a nice reminder that there is something in this franchise that no other Nintendo IP can capture, and it's a nice distraction from how truly sad the state this franchise is in. I had a blast traveling across Atlas in arguably the best looking R-Wing ever. I got some new lore I wasn't expecting, and finally I got to see what it would be like if we had free reign across the vastness in space, playing as some of my favorite characters in gaming. I was once again reminded what it is about these characters in this world that I love so much. It's just hilarious that it wasn't in an actual Star Fox game. Is this the last we've seen from Star Fox? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section. If this is actually the last time we'll see Star Fox, it's at least nice to see that the team decided that their final mission would end with a bang.
So, you heading back to Corneria now?
Eventually. But let's be honest here. You guys need all the help you can get.
Yeah.